Welcome all of you risk takers and truth seekers to podcast Life the Battlefield. Today I'm going to talk about crisis. Crisis, you don't see it, but you are feeling slowly. Let's talk about logistics. Logistics are most important element of our daily life. We're moving goods from point A to point B to point C. We're delivering mail, we're delivering the packages, the food, the medicine, and everything else. And I spent almost 14 years in military. Logistics, it's a least sexiest thing to speak about. Nobody loves to talk about logistics because it's not cool. I mean, there's the guys in the trucks, the forklift drivers, the manual work. There's the boxes. There is a lot of bags. Nobody loves to talk this. Issuing the socks, the uniforms, the helmets, the weapons. But logistics is a very important thing, if not most important thing. In the past, the militaries suffered defeats because logistics was terrible. Germans experienced this in Second World War. Napoleon experienced this in his war against Russia in 19th century. The thing is, logistics, it's very, very crucial element in any aspect of life. And I know we all love to talk about military when you see the military, special forces, the tanks, the airplanes, but somebody needs to deliver the spare parts, the munition, the bombs, list goes on. But today I'm going to talk about different crisis, and that different crisis involves the Suez Canal. I remember standing in the front of the local grocery store from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., then my mother from 2 p.m. to midnight, and then my father from midnight to 7 a.m. next day in order for my parents to buy 1 kilo of salt, sugar, and coffee. Then waiting again the next day for cooking oil, baking powder, some fruit, and vegetables. It was 1982, during the glory days of communism, and we were taught at school to be self-sufficient since the wicked powers of capitalism would smash us. So, have you noticed an increase in the cost of goods? You must see that things actually becoming more and more expensive. There are the times when I feel like the costs are changing daily, like those days when I was a kid. Is it influenced by situation, by the global economy, or something else? That's the question you ask yourself. Naturally, it does. Global economy has been affected. And where is this economy uncertainty coming from? That question we all need to answer. It comes from economic and security sense. The world is more concerned with shipping than with the Gaza War. The Gaza War poses no real threat to international security or world peace. It's a very local war. This assertion is true, even if it appears cynical, aloof, or even ignorant. We can be ignorant as much as we want. But please do not misunderstand me when I say this to you. Despite its severity, cruelty, and large number of civilian casualties, the battle in Gaza remains at most a confined regional issue, with the only two major parties battling mostly inside the Gaza Strip. Other distant powers with clout in the region, from Iran and United States, then the powers of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Europe are also trading carefully. They're all trading carefully. Now, from an economic sense, the Gaza war had no effect on the world economy, or it does. My name is Bekes. This is the Life the Battlefield podcast. I'm the Guinness World Record holder, and I spent 1,800 consecutive combat days in a war. My professional and corporate life involves investigation, interrogation, traitors, spies, high position, crime figures, and today we're going to talk about Suez Canal crisis. Now, Yemen's Houthis, who represent a threat to shipping through the strategically crucial Bab el-Mandeb, I think that's how to say Bab el-Mandeb, strike between the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean, the world's third largest choke point for oil supplies after Strait of Hormuz and Malacca, could open delicate informal balance of interests. Every day, around 6 million barrels pass through it, the majority of which are destined to Europe. However, There are indirect costs as well, increased insurance premiums, crew hazard fees, and other expenses because of shipping attacks. As a result, while the Houthis' actions in the Red Sea may raise costs for practically everything, beginning with oil, residents of the neutral nations stand to gain nothing from the conflict in Gaza. But first, let us go back to the Cold War era and look at the Suez crisis. The 1956 Suez crisis, which exposed the shifting power dynamics of the 20th century, was a watershed moment in post-World War geopolitics. The Suez Canal, which connects Europe and Asia by joining Mediterranean and Red Seas, was at the center of this conflict. As a result, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalization of the canal. Britain, France, and Israel initiated a military intervention. Their goal was to limit Nasser's growing dominance in the region while also restoring what? Control of the canal. So, Egypt says, I want to nationalize Suez Canal. Well, three countries says, no, you cannot. We're going to fight you. So, global tensions stemming from the Suez Canal now they grew to prominence as one of the world's most major waterways once it was completed in 1869, opening up faster economic routes between Europe and Asia. Because of the canal's strategic importance, the British were able to gain a majority interest in the late 1800s. With the canal as its heart, the Middle East became a geopolitical hotspot, of course, by the middle of the 20th century. And then you have decolonization blew over Asia and Africa. Things began to change dramatically in the 1950s. As I mentioned before, Gamal Abdel Nasser came to power in Egypt 1952 after King Farouk was deposed in a coup led by Free Officers Movement. Yeah, well, he's removed by his own. So what causes contributed to Suez crisis? In the year preceding the Suez crisis, events heightened the Middle East tension and laid the framework for the impending conflict. Along with his rise to power in Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser advocated Arab nationalism and desired to reduce Western influence in the area. Israel, a key ally in the region, as well as the former colonial powers France and Britain, are growing increasingly unhappy with his political choices. Although the Baghdad Pact was founded in 1955 by the United Kingdom, Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, and the United States to oppose Soviet hegemony in the Middle East, Nasser saw as a direct danger to his vision of Arab unification. So what he did? In retaliation, Nasser later that he has secured an arms arrangement with Czechoslovakia, a Soviet satellite nation. The West believed that Egypt was drawing closer to the Soviet bloc, strained relations even further. Concerns about Egypt developing ties with the communist countries as well as Nasser's Cold War neutrality led to the withdrawal of financial support from France and United Kingdom in July 1956. So what happened? That decision significantly harmed Nasser's reputation as well as Egypt's feeling of pride. Captured and looking for alternative methods to pay for the dam, Nasser took a gamble. On July 26, 1956, he declared the Suez Canal nationalized. This decision meant that Egyptian government will receive 100% of the proceeds from the canal's operation. Despite widespread support for the canal, the country's biggest supporters, Britain and France, were outraged by this conduct. Now, ask yourself why. And then, what follows? Crisis began. The three countries involved in the sophisticated military operation during the Suez crisis were Britain, France, and Israel, each with its own goals. Because the proposal was being developed behind the closed doors, the parties met in Suez, France at the end of October 1956 to complete that agreement. On October 29, 1956, Israel launched its invasion of the Sinai Peninsula, pushing fast towards the Suez Canal. Their official rationale was that they needed to combat Fedayeen's attacks and address the threat posed by Egyptian soldiers in Sinai. However, the move was a part of bigger plan agreed upon France and Britain. Now, following the Israeli advance, Britain and France issued ultimatum to Egypt and Israel on October 30th, asking a truce and the evacuation of any forces within 10 miles of the Suez Canal. The ultimatum was designed to serve as a pretext for their participation because the British and French expected Egyptian rejection. So, Egypt, as expected, disregarded this ultimatum, and Britain and France launched an aircraft attack on Egyptian soldiers on October 31st. Over the next few days, a series of airstrikes targeted critical Egyptian infrastructure, including airports, communication lines, and military bases. Now, on November 5th, French and British paratroopers descended from the sky at the crucial places along the canal, including Port Said. The next day, naval forces joined the attack, and together they began to conquer the northern portion of the canal. So, three powers had hoped for a swift and decisive military intervention. However, they did not receive it. Egypt faced stiff military and popular opposition. The Egyptians used their scorched earth techniques to disrupt the canal by sinking ships and destroying buildings and bridges. That is correct. So three powers, their plan didn't go as they wanted. So how the world reacted? The international community reacted fast to the Suez crisis, primarily condemning Israel, Britain, and France for intervening. Many individuals argued that the military intervention was a clear attempt by colonial powers to reclaim control of the post-colonial world. That is correct. So Wall says, why are you doing this? The fact that the preparation was done behind closed doors and the intervention was carried under false pretext only added to this image. Despite its reservation about Nasser and his policies, the United States, was very concerned about the crisis' broader implications. Why is that? Well, the US was concerned that the involvement might heighten Cold War tensions by bringing Arab countries closer to the Soviet Union, which they did. Furthermore, Britain and France's actions contradicted the narrative that the US intended to present regarding its support for decolonization and self-determination. To secure a resolution, the US exercised tremendous diplomatic and economic pressure, including threats to withhold financial assistance from the United Kingdom. The Soviet Union criticized the action as well. The Soviets were legitimately concerned about a possible escalation that may lead to direct conflict with the West, even they also meant the use of the situation to strengthen their influence in the Middle East. And who is the good guy? Soviet Union Prime Minister Nikita Khrushchev, you remember him with his face? Sent stern warnings to the United Kingdom, France and Israel, and even hinted an action on Egypt's behalf. That is correct. So Russia says, be careful what you're doing. We're going to help Egypt. There's another player, United Nations. United Nations was a key factor in crisis management. During the General Assembly emergency session, there was a widespread condemnation of the invasion. As a result, the United Nations Emergency Force, UNEF, was founded as the first peacekeeping organization of its kind, with the task of maintaining the truce and ensuring the withdrawal of foreign soldiers from Egypt. Many countries, both in the West and newly founded republics in Asia and Africa, condemned the invasion. Of course, protests erupted in a few cities through the world, including London and New York, highlighting global fury at Israel, Britain, and France's actions. Guys, it's very important that you listen and learn from the history. It's not everything what we see today on social media. Everything has roots in history. Same it's with the Suez Canal crisis. And every crisis has beginning, has the end. So Britain and France agreed to cease fire at the end of November 1956 in response to diplomatic economic pressure. The United Nations played an important role ensuring the conclusion of hostilities and the following departure of foreign forces. The United Nations Emergency Force was dispatched to Egypt to supervise cessation of hostilities and allow the evacuation of Israeli, British and French forces. Now, that's very interesting because United Nations remained in Sinai Peninsula until 1967, acting as a barrier between the Israeli and Egyptian forces, not British and French, Israeli and Egyptian forces, and it was critical to the region's continuing stability through that time. The early aftermath of the Suez crisis had tremendous influence on the parties immediately involved. The crisis saw a significant decline in Britain's and France's global power. Well, they never had the power after the Second World War. The widespread condemnation they faced, as well as their failure to achieve their objectives without American assistance, signaled the end of an era in which European nations could alone dictate the laws of international affairs. Even though Israel enjoyed some military wins, it was diplomatically isolated. Nonetheless, the episode highlighted Israel's security concerns from its neighbors, setting the door for additional clashes in the region. And the aftermath of the crisis was both a cause of struggle and source of victory for Egypt and Nasser. Nasser and Egypt, they won because militarily they may be being defeated, but still, entire world stood for them. Nasser became a hero in the Arab world as he opposed colonial powers and maintained control over the Suez Canal. However, due to damage and blockages caused by the battle, the canal was closed until April 1957. Its reopening symbolized Egypt's tenacity and the country's independence. Well, I would prefer not to say that history repeats itself. We must, without doubt, learn from that, as I said before. What causes disagreements, conflicts, and economic crisis affects everyone on this planet Earth. So it's not only one side fault. Everybody who goes in the conflicts and disagreements resulting in wars or clashes affects everyone on the earth, one way or another. And I'm telling you this, as you remember, when the COVID started, 2020, and the world sat back and said, how beautiful world, it's peaceful, how dolphins are, are happy in the oceans, how the whales are, going to the all waters undisrupted, there's no noise, there's no pollution, list goes on. I asked myself, okay, what's going to happen to the world? Because we have created the world of fast-moving goods. We created the world where the shipment comes within 24 hours from one side of the planet to another, even less. And then suddenly we have the stop, break, handbrake on everything what we know. Of course, we can't catch up with this one. And I do remember as a kid, it was difficult for years because due to recession, inflation, and the shortages to live. And I remember this as a kid. I wish this to nobody. So, Suez Canal crisis is a one thing, but guys, think about logistics as a heartbeat, not just a highways, where you can deliver things, but the heartbeat of every nation. And every war, every conflict, somehow, some way affects that heartbeat. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think? Thank you.